2:14 in the afternoon, the central Persian Gulf. USS BATAAN was already maintaining a steady course of 180 degrees at 12 knots. For the last 22 minutes, the crew had been tracking a single aerial contact that had originated from the Iranian coastline near Bandar Abbas. It was a Mohajer 6 unmanned aerial vehicle, and it was currently orbiting the amphibious assault ship at an altitude of 3,000 feet. The question facing the bridge was how long the surveillance would last, and at what point the drone's flight path would cross the threshold of a hostile act. The air over the Persian Gulf was heavy with 90% humidity, creating a thick haze that reduced horizontal visibility to 5 miles. The water was a dull, metallic gray. The BATAAN, a 45,000-ton Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, was conducting what the Department of Defense officially classifies as a routine transit through international waters. On the flight deck, 2 AV-8B Harrier jets sat in a high state of readiness, but they remained chained to the deck. Inside the Combat Information Center, the atmosphere was clinical. The only sound was the low hum of the electronics and the rhythmic calls from the radar operators. Contact designated 7042 is holding steady at 3,000 feet, the tactical air officer reported. Range is 4,500 yards. It is maintaining a circular pattern around our position. Captain Miller stood behind the consoles, watching the blue icon of the BATAAN and the yellow icon, representing the Iranian drone. Any response on the bridge-to-bridge? Negative, Captain, the communications officer replied. We have hailed the Iranian ground control station on the international air distress frequency 3 times. There has been no acknowledgement. They are squawking a standard civilian transponder code, but they are not responding to queries. Under the standing rules of engagement for the United States Fifth Fleet, the presence of a surveillance drone in international airspace does not constitute an immediate threat. However, the proximity of the Mohajer 6 was beginning to interfere with the ship's planned helicopter flight operations. The drone was equipped with a multispectral electro-optical sensor payload, capable of filming the BATAAN's deck layout and any visible equipment with high resolution. 3 miles away, inside a darkened mobile control station on the Iranian coast, the drone's pilot adjusted the camera gimbal. The feed showed the massive deck of the BATAAN, the wake trailing behind it, and the individual sailors visible on the catwalks. The pilot was following a pre-planned surveillance track, but his orders from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy were to test the reaction time of the American sensors. He moved the joystick, bringing the drone 500 feet lower. Back on the BATAAN, the radar altimeter chirped. Contact is descending, the operator announced. Altitude 2,500 feet. Range closing to 4,000 yards. Captain Miller did not move. Maintain current posture. Continue to monitor and log every course change. We are not going to be the ones to escalate this. The drone continued its slow, mechanical orbit. It had been 25 minutes since the first detection, and the interaction was only beginning. Part 2. The Escalation, 2:39 in the afternoon. The central Persian Gulf. The Mohajer 6 drone began a deliberate descent from 2,500 feet. Over the course of 4 minutes, it leveled off at exactly 1,200 feet. This altitude put the aircraft directly within the visual range of the lookouts on the USS BATAAN's signal bridge. The drone's speed remained constant at 85 knots, but its flight path was no longer a circular orbit. It had shifted to a racetrack pattern that brought it directly across the BATAAN's bow every 6 minutes. In the Combat Information Center, the air grew colder as the air conditioning units worked to offset the heat generated by the AN/SPY-6 radar arrays. The tactical air officer, a lieutenant commander, updated the status on the large screen display. Contact 7042 has leveled at 1,200 feet, the TAO reported. The racetrack pattern is intersecting our projected PIM position intended movement. If it maintains this turn rate, the next pass will put it within 1,000 yards of our forward vertical launch system. Captain Miller stood by the master surface console. Record the deviation from the previous flight profile. Have the signal bridge attempt a visual hail using the flashing light. If they have a camera on us, let them see we are watching back. On the signal bridge, a seaman directed a high-intensity xenon searchlight toward the drone's projected position. The light pulsed in a standard international signal, requesting the aircraft to identify itself and increase its distance. There was no change in the drone's telemetry. 70 miles to the northeast, at a secure facility on the outskirts of Bandar Abbas, the Iranian ground control station was manned by a crew of 4. The pilot sat before a bank of 3 monitors. The center screen displayed the BATAAN in a high-contrast thermal feed. White heat bloomed from the ship's exhaust stacks and the idling engines of the aircraft on deck. The Iranian mission commander stood behind the pilot. His orders, relayed from the IRGC Navy Regional Headquarters, were specific. Determine the exact range at which the American ship shifted its radar from search mode to fire control mode. This required a series of incremental prods, controlled maneuvers designed to trigger a specific technical response without crossing the legal threshold of a hostile intent. Take it down another 200 feet on the next northern leg. The mission commander ordered in Farsi. Keep the camera stabilized on the midships area. We need to see if they are uncovering the phalanx mounts. The pilot adjusted the flight surfaces. On the BATAAN's radar screens, the yellow icon dipped again. Contact is descending. 1,000 feet. The radar operator called out. Range is 3,000 yards and closing. Bearing 010. The bridge wing lookouts reported the drone was now visible to the naked eye, a small, white shape against the haze of the horizon. It looked insignificant compared to the 840-foot length of the BATAAN, but the payload it carried was the primary concern. The Mohajer 6 is capable of carrying up to 4 Km-class precision-guided munitions. While the drone had not opened its weapon bay doors, its proximity was now a breach of the safe and professional distance usually maintained in the Gulf. Bridge, CIC. Captain Miller said into the handset, "Alert the flight deck officer. All personnel not required for essential topside duties are to move inside the skin of the ship. I want a clean deck. We are going to General Quarters, Condition 3. The ship's internal alarm did not sound that would be too provocative, but the word was passed quietly over the 1MC secondary circuits. Sailors moved with practiced efficiency, clearing the catwalks. The BATAAN was tightening its posture. The drone began its turn for the next pass. It was now 2,400 yards away, 3:15 in the afternoon. The central Persian Gulf, USS BATAAN, was now operating under Condition 3, meaning a portion of its defensive armament was manned and ready for immediate employment. In the Combat Information Center, the Tactical Air Officer, or TAO, was reviewing the standing rules of engagement issued by United States Central Command. The specific challenge was the legal distinction between hostile intent and a hostile act. A drone orbiting a ship is not, by itself, a hostile act. However, the repeated low-altitude passes and the lack of communication were increasingly being categorized by the TAO as a demonstration of hostile intent. Captain, the contact is now within the 1,500-yard bubble, the TAO reported. Under current ROE, we have the authority to utilize non-kinetic deterrence. I am requesting permission to energize the SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite for active jamming of the drone's command link. Captain Miller checked the digital clock on the bulkhead. Request denied. We are in international waters, and so are they. If we jam that link, and the drone crashes into the sea, or worse, into our flight deck, we have escalated a surveillance mission into a kinetic incident. We stay in passive mode. What is the status of the Phalanx? Mounts 21 and 22 are in standby. Captain, the TAO replied. The search radars are active, but the firing triggers are inhibited. We are not radiating a targeting track. The Phalanx Close-In Weapon System, or CIWS, is a radar-guided 20mm Gatling gun designed to destroy incoming missiles. In standby mode, its sensors track potential threats, but the barrels do not follow the target. This was a deliberate tactical choice. By not pointing the guns at the drone, the BATAAN was signaling that it was aware of the contact but was not yet prepared to fire. 80 miles away, at the Iranian control station, the mission commander noticed the change in the BATAAN's profile. On his high-resolution feed, the deck was now empty of all non-essential personnel. The small, white-clad figures of the sailors had disappeared inside the superstructure. He also noted the rotation of the SLQ-32 antennas on the ship's mast. They have moved to a higher readiness state, the Iranian commander observed. They are clearing the deck. Pilot, bring the Mahajer to 1,000 yards. Stay on the starboard side. I want to see if the forward Mark 38 mounts are manned. The pilot adjusted the drone's heading. The Mahajer 6 shifted its racetrack pattern, tightening the turn. The drone was now close enough that the sound of its Rotax engine could be heard by the lookouts. On the BATAAN's bridge wing, a low, persistent drone that competed with the sound of the wind and the ship's own ventilation systems. On the bridge, the officer of the deck watched the small aircraft through stabilized binoculars. He's inside 1,000 yards, bearing 090. He's holding steady at 800 feet. The BATAAN's 5-inch guns and missile launchers were useless against a target this small and this close. The defense of the ship now rested on the small-caliber weapon teams and the automated systems. Update 5th Fleet, Miller ordered. Report that we are being shadowed by an armed capable UAV at a distance of 1,000 yards. Inform them that we are maintaining course and speed, but we are prepared to defend the unit if the contact closes within 500 yards. The message was transmitted via secure satellite link to the Naval Forces, Central Command Headquarters in Bahrain. The bureaucracy of the Navy was now engaged. The incident was no longer just a local encounter between a ship and a drone. It was a tracked event at the theater command level. The drone completed its turn and began a run that would take it directly over the BATAAN's stern. 3:45 in the afternoon. Naval Support Activity, Bahrain. The report from USS BATAAN reached the 5th Fleet Maritime Operations Center within 90 seconds of transmission. On the large digital displays in the darkened watch floor, the BATAAN's icon was flanked by a yellow diamond designated as an unmanned aerial vehicle. The incident was now being tracked on the Global Command and Control System Maritime. The watch officer, a commander with 15 years of experience in the surface fleet, reviewed the logs. BATAAN reports the contact is maintaining a racetrack pattern at 1,000 yards. Altitude is 800 feet. They have attempted hails on international air distress and bridge-to-bridge Channel 16 with no response. What is the status of the ROE request? The Deputy Operations Officer asked. The captain is requesting authorization for active electronic countermeasures if the contact closes to 500 yards, the watch officer replied. The request is being routed to the Admiral. Current guidance is to avoid any action that could be interpreted as a kinetic engagement in international waters. This bureaucratic delay was a standard feature of maritime operations in the Gulf. While the captain of the BATAAN had the inherent right of self-defense, the use of electronic jamming, which could cause the drone to lose control, required a higher level of legal and strategic clearance. The concern at 5th Fleet was not the drone itself, but the potential for a localized incident to be used by the Iranian government as a pretext for closing the shipping lanes or seizing a commercial tanker in retaliation. Simultaneously, the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Office in Dubai was notified of the activity. Because the BATAAN was in proximity to a major commercial shipping lane, the presence of an unresponsive drone created a navigational hazard for nearby merchant vessels. A British-flagged Suezmax tanker, the Pacific Voyager, was currently 5 miles to the west of the BATAAN, UKMTO, to Pacific Voyager. The radio crackled in the tanker's bridge. Be advised of an unresponsive UAV operating in your vicinity at coordinates 25 degrees north, 54 degrees east. Exercise caution. Back on the Iranian coast, the IRGC mission commander received a status update from his own chain of command. The objective of the mission had been partially achieved. They had forced the Americans to clear their flight deck and enter a heightened defensive posture. However, the mission commander wanted a more precise measurement of the BATAAN's radar sensitivity. The Americans are communicating with Bahrain, the Iranian commander said, looking at a signal intelligence monitor that showed an increase in satellite uplink activity from the ship. They are waiting for orders. Pilot, on the next pass, bank the aircraft toward the ship's island. Do not cross the deck, but get close enough to trigger their optical tracking sensors. The drone pilot adjusted his controls. The Mohajer 6 began a slow, banking turn. On the BATAAN's radar, the vector leader, the line indicating the drone's projected path, shifted. It was no longer running parallel to the ship. It was now pointing directly at the BATAAN superstructure. In the BATAAN's Combat Information Center, the radar operator's voice was flat. Contact 7042 is turning inbound. Bearing 280, range 900 yards. It is closing the distance. Captain Miller picked up the handset for the internal circuit. All stations. This is the captain. We are holding our course. Stand by for possible maneuver. The drone was now 700 yards away. It was no longer a surveillance orbit. It was a direct approach. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The central Persian Gulf. The Mohajer 6 drone reached the 500-yard threshold. On the bridge of the USS BATAAN, the contact was no longer a mere data point on a radar screen. It was a physical presence. The drone was flying at an altitude of 600 feet, roughly level with the ship's primary flight control station, known as Pryfly. Through the thick, ballistic glass of the bridge, the lookouts could clearly identify the twin-boom tail and the dark shape of the sensor turret beneath the drone's nose. In the Combat Information Center, the tactical air officer transitioned the tracking from radar to the AN/KAX-2 ship's nautical electronic search and tracking system. This high-definition electro-optical sensor locked onto the drone, projecting a crystal-clear image onto the main bulkhead monitors. The image showed the drone's propeller spinning at high revolutions and the white numbering on its fuselage. Optical lock established, the TAO announced. The system is maintaining a steady track. The contact is now within the ship's self-defense bubble. Captain Miller watched the screen. The drone was so close that the sensor could pick up the vibration in its wings. He's filming us. He's looking for specific equipment. Rotate the SN East-Est camera. I want the pilot to see the lens tracking him. Make it obvious. On the Iranian side, the visual was equally sharp. The drone's pilot, 70 miles away, watched his monitor as the BATAAN's optical sensor, a large, bulbous lens assembly on the ship's mast, swiveled to follow his every move. He could see the individual panes of glass on the bridge and the gray muzzles of the 25mm Bushmaster cannons on the catwalks. They have a hard optical lock, the pilot reported to his mission commander. The camera is slave to my position. I am approaching the island superstructure now. Distance is 450 yards. Maintain your heading, the Iranian mission commander replied. Do not cross the longitudinal axis of the ship. Stay on the starboard side. We are measuring their electronic emission levels. They have not yet energized their fire control radars. Inside the BATAAN, the procedure for a close-in surveillance encounter was being followed to the letter. Every action was being recorded for the post-mission intelligence brief. The ship's legal officer was now on the bridge, documenting the drone's proximity as a violation of the 1972 international regulations for preventing collisions at sea, specifically Rule 8 regarding actions to avoid collision. Range is 400 yards, the radar operator called out. The contact is beginning to bank. He's turning toward our wake. The drone passed within 350 yards of the ship's island. The sound of its engine was a sharp, mechanical whine that echoed off the BATAAN's steel hull. For 5 seconds, the drone was directly abeam of the bridge. The lookouts watched it pass. No one spoke. No one moved toward the weapon triggers. The discipline of the crew was the primary defense against an accidental escalation. As the drone cleared the island and moved toward the stern, Captain Miller turned to his TAO. He's had his look. Now we give him something to think about. Prepare to transition to an active radar lock. The drone was now positioned over the BATAAN's turbulent wake, preparing for its next circuit. 4:15 in the afternoon. The central Persian Gulf. Captain Miller issued the order to the tactical air officer. TAO, bridge. Energize the fire control radar on the forward phalanx mount. Lock and track contact 7042. Do not engage. I want a solid paint for 60 seconds. This was the decision moment in the engagement. Until now, The USS BATAAN had used only its volume search radars and passive optical sensors. These systems scan large areas of the sky, much like a wide-angle lens. A fire control radar, or FCR, is a narrow-beam, high-frequency energy source designed for one purpose: to provide a firing solution for a weapon system. In naval terminology, transitioning to an FCR lock is known as illuminating a target. It is the electronic equivalent of drawing a sidearm and aiming it at an intruder's chest. AAW, TAO. Locking contact 7042, the tactical air officer announced. On the BATAAN's mast, the white dome of the forward phalanx mount slewed rapidly to the right. The internal radar transitioned from a wide search pattern to a stare mode. A concentrated beam of electromagnetic energy hit the Mohajer-6 drone, reflecting back with enough precision to guide 20mm rounds to its fuel tank. Inside the Iranian ground control station, a high-pitched, steady tone began to emanate from the pilot's console. A red indicator on the secondary flight display began to flash. It was the radar warning receiver, or RWR. The drone's onboard sensors had detected the specific pulse repetition frequency of the American Phalanx system. The Iranian pilot immediately checked his telemetry. Commander, we have been spiked. The American ship has a fire control lock on our position. Signal strength is high. They are in a targeting posture. The mission commander in Bandar Abbas leaned in toward the screen. He knew the procedural stakes. An FCR lock is often the final step before the weapons-free command. Under international maritime norms, maintaining a lock for an extended period can be interpreted as a hostile act. However, the American ship had not altered its course, and it had not opened fire. Maintain the drone's current altitude, the Iranian commander ordered. Do not maneuver aggressively. If we dive, they may interpret it as an attack profile and fire. If we climb, we show we are intimidated. We will hold this position for 30 seconds to see if they break the lock. Back in the BATAAN's Combat Information Center, the radar operator watched the quality of track indicator. It was at 100%. The computer was now capable of predicting the drone's position to within 6 inches. Track is solid, Captain, the TAO reported. The drone has not reacted. It is maintaining 800 feet and 85 knots. It is not attempting to break the lock. 45 seconds, Miller said, looking at his watch. Let them feel the energy. We are establishing the boundary. The air between the ship and the drone was now filled with invisible, high-intensity pulses. For both crews, the professional reality of the situation was clear. The BATAAN was demonstrating that it could destroy the Mohajer-6 in less than 2 seconds. The question was whether the Iranian operators would accept this as the final warning or continue to push the proximity. 60 seconds, the TAO called out. Drop the lock, Miller ordered. Return to search mode. Let's see how they respond to the release. 4:25 in the afternoon. Bandar Abbas, Iran. Inside the ground control station, the auditory alarm for the radar warning receiver ceased. The pilot observed the change on his signal intelligence display as the high-frequency energy from the American Fire Control Radar returned to ambient levels. The USS BATAAN had broken the lock. The lock is gone, the pilot reported. The Americans have returned to a search posture. They are no longer illuminating the airframe. The Iranian mission commander looked at the fuel gauge on the primary telemetry screen. The Mohajer-6 had been airborne for 4 hours. While it had enough fuel to remain on station for several more hours, the mission objectives were reaching a point of diminishing returns. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy now possessed the BATAAN's specific reaction times, its electronic signature during a fire control transition, and high-resolution imagery of its deck configuration. The Americans are not going to yield the lane, the mission commander said. He was evaluating a new piece of data on his secondary screen. A second American vessel, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, was reported by land-based radar to be 30 miles to the south, closing on the BATAAN's position at 28 knots. If the drone remained, it risked being caught between two separate air defense bubbles. Pilot, conduct one final wide-angle pass at 2,000 feet, the commander ordered. Then, set a return course for Bandar Abbas. We have the data required for the daily report. The pilot adjusted the flight surfaces. The drone banked away from the BATAAN's wake, increasing its distance to 2,000 yards, and beginning a steady climb. It was a professional withdrawal, not a flight in panic, but a calculated end to a surveillance mission. On the bridge of the BATAAN, the lookouts noted the change in the drone's behavior through their binoculars. Contact is opening the range, the starboard lookout reported. Bearing 045. It is banking north-northeast. Altitude is passing 1,500 feet. Captain Miller watched the yellow icon on the large screen display begin to move away from the ship's center. He's heading home. TAO. Keep the optical track on him until he's outside 12 miles. I want to be certain he isn't just repositioning for a low-level approach from the sun. The atmosphere in the Combat Information Center did not shift into celebration. The sailors remained at their consoles, continuing to log the drone's speed and heading. In the professional world of Persian Gulf transits, the end of an encounter is as procedural as the beginning. The interaction had lasted exactly 2 hours and 11 minutes. The drone continued its climb, its small engine noise finally fading entirely from the BATAAN's bridge wing. 4:45 in the afternoon, the central Persian Gulf. The Mohajer 6 drone continued its ascent, passing through 3,500 feet. Its ground speed increased to 95 knots as it turned toward a heading of 030 degrees, a direct line for the Iranian coastline. On the bridge of the USS BATAAN, the radar operator confirmed the contact was no longer maintaining a surveillance pattern. Contact 7042 is now at range 7 miles and opening, the tactical air officer reported. Altitude is 4,000 feet and climbing. It has cleared our immediate air defense sector. Captain Miller remained in the Combat Information Center. Despite the drone's departure, the ship did not immediately stand down from its heightened readiness state. Standard operating procedure for Fifth Fleet transits requires a sanitization period, a window of time, usually 15 to 30 minutes, to ensure that a withdrawing contact is not acting as a decoy for a secondary surface or aerial threat. Maintain condition. 3. Miller ordered. I want the lookouts to keep a tight watch on the horizon. TAO. Cross-reference our surface picture with the incoming data from the Arleigh Burke to our south. Ensure there are no fast attack craft moving into the hazy sectors. 30 miles to the south, the USS McFall, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, had been monitoring the entire interaction via Link 16, the tactical data exchange network that allows ships to share a real-time God's eye view of the battle space. The McFall's more powerful AN/SPY-1D radar had been tracking the drone since its initial launch from Bandar Abbas, BATAAN. This is McFall, the radio operator on the destroyer transmitted. We have your shadow on our glass. He is maintaining a steady course for the mainland. We have no other subsurface or surface contacts of interest in your immediate sector. Over. McFall, BATAAN. Copy all. We are holding current course and speed. Out. Inside the Iranian control station, the pilot engaged the drone's autopilot for the transit back to base. The mission commander sat at a desk to the side, beginning the process of drafting the after-action report for the IRGC Navy Command. The report would be filed as a successful surveillance mission into the western area of operations. The American ship demonstrated a high level of sensor discipline. The commander noted in his log. They utilized optical tracking for the majority of the encounter and only transitioned to fire control when the aircraft approached within 500 meters of their superstructure. Their response was measured and followed their established patterns. This was the quiet reality of the Persian Gulf. Both sides were constantly studying the other, collecting data on reaction times, frequency shifts, and command and control behavior. The incident was not seen by the Iranian command as a failure or a provocation, but as a data collection exercise. On the BATAAN, the humidity began to lift slightly as the sun moved lower in the sky. though the temperature remained above 90 degrees. The drone was now a flickering dot on the long-range radar, 12 miles out and still climbing. The immediate tactical pressure had dissipated, replaced by the administrative requirement to document the last 2 hours of activity. Range is 15 miles, the TAO announced. Contact 7042 is now crossing into Iranian territorial waters, 5:15 in the afternoon, the central Persian Gulf. The radar return for Contact 7042 dropped from the USS BATAAN's primary air search display at 5:16. The drone had crossed the 12 nautical mile limit, marking the edge of Iranian territorial airspace. On the bridge, the digital readout for the drone's range showed 24 miles and opening. Contact has cleared the sector, the tactical air officer reported. No additional air contacts detected within 50 miles. The surface picture remains clear. Captain Miller stood at the center of the Combat Information Center, his eyes on the master surface console. Very well. Secure from Condition 3. Resume normal steaming. Notify the flight deck officer that the deck is open for scheduled maintenance. I want a full download of the SNEST footage and the SLQ-32 signal logs sent to my cabin within the hour. The word was passed over the ship's internal communication circuits. The heightened state of readiness, which had lasted for 2 hours and 57 minutes, was officially over. In the passageways, sailors who had been stationed at damage control lockers or ammunition hoists moved back to their regular duties. The condition: 3. Lighting a dim setting designed to preserve night vision and reduce electronic glare was switched back to standard white illumination. On the flight deck, the yellow-shirted handlers began the process of moving the AV-8B Harriers back into their parking spots. The heavy chains were checked, and the refueling crews moved in. The rhythm of the ship returned to its baseline of constant mechanical maintenance. In the ship's administrative office, the yeoman of the watch began the process of formalizing the encounter. Every naval incident of this nature requires an OPREP 3, an operational report to be filed with the Chief of Naval Operations in Washington, D.C. The report is a dry, chronological list of facts: the time of first contact, the coordinates of every course change, the number of hails attempted, and the exact distance of the closest point of approach. 75 miles to the north, at the Bandar Abbas airfield, the Mohajer 6 drone touched down on the tarmac. Its engine cut out, and a ground crew moved in to secure the aircraft. The pilot climbed out of the control station, his headset still around his neck. He carried a ruggedized hard drive containing the high-definition footage recorded by the drone's sensor ball. The footage showed the USS BATAAN from every angle: the number of aircraft on the deck, the status of its radar antennas, and the specific silhouettes of the crew members on the bridge wing. This data would be transferred to the IRGC Navy's Intelligence Directorate for analysis. They would look for any changes in the ship's equipment since its last transit, new antennas, repaired hull plating, or changes in the flight deck configuration. Back on the BATAAN, the signal bridge lookout made the final entry in the bridge log: 1722. Contact 7042, clear of radar range. No further interaction. Ship maintains course 180, speed 12 knots. The incident was now a matter of record. It would be categorized as a routine surveillance encounter in the official archives. There had been no shots fired, no equipment damaged, and no injuries. However, the data gathered by both sides would influence how the next encounter was handled. In the Persian Gulf, the all clear is never permanent. It is simply a pause in a continuous cycle of observation. The BATAAN continued its transit south, moving toward the Strait of Hormuz. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the empty flight deck. 19 hours after the encounter, the Pentagon press briefing room. The incident involving the USS BATAAN and the Iranian Mohajer 6 drone was reduced to a single paragraph in the Department of Defense's daily maritime activity report. During the scheduled afternoon briefing, the Pentagon press secretary addressed the event with the measured, technical language characteristic of such interactions. At approximately 2:14 in the afternoon local time, A routine transit by the USS BATAAN was monitored by an Iranian unmanned aerial vehicle, the spokesperson stated. The interaction lasted approximately 2 hours. Our units followed standard operating procedures, maintained a defensive posture, and utilized non-kinetic measures to ensure the safety of the ship. At no point did the encounter escalate to a kinetic exchange. We characterized the interaction as safe but unprofessional, due to the altitude and proximity of the drone. This distinction, safe but unprofessional, is a specific technical classification used by the United States Navy. It indicates that while the ship was never in immediate danger of a collision or attack, the Iranian aircraft violated the customary buffer zones that professional mariners and pilots observe in international waters. Retired Admiral James Vance, speaking as a strategic analyst on a news network, provided the broader context for the surveillance. What occurred in the central Persian Gulf yesterday was, by any technical definition, a maritime incident of the first order, the Admiral said. The fact that it did not escalate is a testament to the training of the BATAAN's crew. The IRGC Navy uses these drones as mobile sensors to test our electronic emission control and our rules of engagement thresholds. Every time they fly within 500 yards of one of our ships, they are looking for a tell, a specific radar frequency, or a change in ship behavior that they can exploit in a more serious conflict. Strategic analysts suggest that these encounters serve a dual purpose for Tehran. Domestically, the footage of an Iranian drone hovering over a massive American amphibious ship is used as propaganda to demonstrate Iranian reach. Technically, it allows their engineers to refine the sensor packages on the Muhajir 6 based on how well they can track American sailors and equipment under high humidity conditions. On the USS BATAAN, the event was already being archived. The intelligence officers had completed their deck log entries and transmitted the high-resolution optical data to the Office of Naval Intelligence in Suitland, Maryland. There, analysts would compare the drone's flight path to 47 other similar encounters recorded over the previous 12 months. They would look for any changes in the ship's equipment since its last transit, new antennas, repaired hull plating, or changes in the flight deck configuration. The BATAAN continued its mission, crossing through the Strait of Hormuz and into the Gulf of Oman without further incident. The crew resumed its standard rotation of watches, maintenance, and training. To the public, the event was a footnote in a news cycle dominated by other regional tensions. To the sailors on the bridge, it was 2 hours of focused, professional discipline in a waterway where the margin for error is measured in yards and seconds. The incident was closed. The official record would describe it as a navigational encounter. In the persistent gray reality of the Persian Gulf, the next contact was already being tracked on a radar screen elsewhere.